Started. Welcome to your Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee. I'm joined by my colleagues, Council Members Rue, Martinez, and O'Farrell coming in now. Mr. Buscaino will not be joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and start with multiple speaker items to get that, because what I'd like to do is to move items 4, 5, and 6 on consent, hold item 3 for a technical correction, and then address items 1 and 2. But before we can do that, we have some speakers who have signed up for multiple items, so I'd like to go forward with that. Obviously, the way that you wrote your names down, I'm not going to read those out loud, but Mr. Herman, you can come forward. So we'll do two minutes for the items, and then we'll give you 1 minute for general public comment.
Muchas gracias. Ya sabe que en el lugar de Mulholland Drive hay un camino que se llama Saltillo.
Do we need to get a translator for Mr. Herman?
I fucking speak in your language, bitch. What do you mean? I said in translation, nigga went to Mulholland Drive from Saltillo Road, and I found out that the bitch that named it Trinidad Road has an issue with the fucking dirt. La tierra de putos on the roadway. So that's where I was at on number 3 before you fucking interrupt me. Then I said on the verbal report, Eric Garcetti, the mayor, sucks cock relative to the gang reduction program for youth development because the police department likes to fuck cadets. And then I went to item number 2 where it says, Paul Martin Krikorian, the Armenian bastard, established a pilot road for using plastic. Well, how am I supposed to chupar, which in English means suck your cock, for the city waste stream as a polymeric binder? But there was no community impact, as you heard, because the wetbacks that come here illegally like to suck on my straw, as they say they have entitlements, when I'm the real wetback that wants housing for fucking homeless people, so I don't have to pick up your straws and suck Eric Garcetti's cock. Now, as far as my general public comment.
Due to the circumstances of the robust language, the public must adhere to what is free speech as a declaration of my participation. You see, when I did not come from Mexico, I lived in the United States. I am naturally born citizen of the state of California from what I can remember, but for some reason, some fucking Jew nigger has said that I have to pick up
Mr. Herman,
trash.
it's got to be related to the committee
I
items.
have to
You
pick
know
up
that.
trash.
Mr. Herman, it's got to be
I
related to
have
the
to
committee.
pick up trash because the fucking Oreo up there keeps interrupting me as I try to explain. I will not adhere to your rules because constitutionally I am protected by free speech, and as Donald Trump would say to the fucking Jews, send the niggers back to Israel,
Your time has
bury the
expired.
niggers, and let's save America.
Okay, please remove him.
Brandenburg versus Ohio, fuck years.
Let the record know Mr. Herman has been kicked out of committee for going off topic and going beyond his time. Please remove him from the chambers. You went well beyond it. You're continuing to disrupt the meeting. Please remove him. Next item, next person, Mr. Spindler. You're continuing to disrupt the meeting. Okay, Mr. Spindler, you may start.
They called him a Jew nigger. So on item 1, hold on, he's still talking. It's because the Jew nigger on number 1 had a verbal report from the mayor's office, another Jew nigger, relative to the city's gang reduction
and youth development program. And a bunch of these dumb fucking little kids will never get housing thanks to Nuri. Number 2, motion by the dumb fucking Armenian and the Jew nigger Blumenfield relative to the establishment of a pilot fucking construction fucking program using plastic dildos from the city's waste stream as polymeric cock binders. Yes, we do not support the use of cock binders because polymeric binders is what Eric Garcetti does up his ass every night. Number 3, Oriole way. An Oriole is an Oreo. This is a very racist term, number 3, because an Oriole is an Oreo, which is basically Bob and a nigger making a kid that's an Oreo way. So we don't want Oreos in the city, and we don't want Oreo way drives. Regarding a terminus, fuck you and fuck number 3. Number 4 is the Jose Weezer CD14 FBI probe. Olive Street. Fuck Olive Street and fuck Midway Lane. There's all of you assholes on number 5 and 6. Jew niggers will make laws.
You can have your 1 minute of public comment
So,
items related to the committee.
Jew niggers run public works and gang reduction. Jew niggers are always dealing us a bad hand. I went to the city of Beverly Hills City Council last night to see what public works is there. It's beautiful and clean. Why they don't have Jew niggers running Beverly Hills and public works like the city of LA has Jew niggers running public works. They only have Jews running public works, not Jew niggers running public works, making a whole fucking mess out of the whole Jew nigger public works program. The city's streets look like shit. There's tents everywhere, needles everywhere, and the best part, Beverly Hills dumps all their homeless in front of Bob Jew nigger Blumenfeld's house. Fuck you.
Done. Okay, now we can proceed with the meeting. Sorry for folks who are coming in and not used to this, but this is unfortunately an unfortunate byproduct of the Brown Act. That we and a couple of legal cases that we have to put up with some nonsense here. So we're going to move on to, we're going to start with item 3 because that is relatively quick and we have a technical correction to that. Correct. Mr. Espinoza, could you please read item number 3?
Item number 3 is a report from the city engineer relative to the vacation of Oriole Way from Oriole Drive to its easterly terminus.
Okay, and there is a technical correction on this item. Would you like to speak to that?
Greg Vandergrift, Public Works Engineering, Council members. The technical correction dated August 20th, 2019 for the Public Works Committee. Vacation 1400910 Oriole Way from Oriole Drive to its easterly terminus. The technical correction amending the conditions by BOE to the city's engineer's report dated November 4th, 2013. Delete condition 11. And condition 2 shall read as follows, that a suitable map approved by the Central District Engineering Office delineating the limits, including bearings and distances of the areas to be vacated, be submitted to the Land Development Group prior to the preparation of the resolution to vacate. And condition 5 shall read as follows, that the following conditions be provided adjoining the petitioner's properties in a manner satisfactory to the city engineer. Dedicate 3 feet as future street along Oriole Drive, adjoining Lot 1 of Tract 12742 to provide an 18-foot wide half right-of-way. And condition 6 shall read as follows, that the petitioner reconstruct and widen the existing 10-foot wide half roadway along the easterly side of Oriole Drive to provide for a paved variable 10 to 13-foot wide half roadway with a minimum 20-foot wide full roadway. integral curb and gutter together with a suitable transition to join the existing improvements, all in a manner satisfactory to the city engineer. Also, condition 13 shall read as follows: that suitable evidence be submitted showing lot 21 of tract number 19229, the portion of the southeast 1/4 section 7, Township 1 South, North 14 West, R53, Lot 1 of tract number 12747, and Lot B, R1 of parcel map number 3459, adjacent to the street vacation area, will not be landlocked and will have a minimum 20-foot street frontage or an amount of street frontage deemed sufficient by the Department of Building and Safety or through other suitable arrangements as the result of the street vacation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see I have a card from Mr. John Henning, although I was told that you were pulling your card. Mr. Henning, do you wish to speak? Okay, just for the record, the card was withdrawn. Colleagues, are there any comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, I'll recommend that we adopt the recommendations in the Bureau of Engineering's November 4th report with the technical amendments that were provided by BOE. Seeing no objection, that will be the order. I'd also like to take items 4, 5, and 6 now that we've satisfied public comment on consent. Is there any objection to moving those items? So without objection, we will approve items 4, 5, and 6. And that will bring us back to the front of the order to item number 1. Mr. Espinoza, if you would please read item number 1 into the record.
Item number 1 is a verbal report from the Mayor's Office relative to the city's gang reduction and youth development program.
Mr. Tremblay come up, and I should say, I know the work of the gang and prevention is a very difficult job. When this program was created, there were a lot of folks who thought it would fail, but I want to commend GRID for many successes that you guys have had. It's hard to measure success in a program that has a goal of preventing something from happening. It's hard to measure the negative. There have been fluctuations in gang crime since the program was created in 2007, but overall we've seen a decrease in gang crime. There have been some setbacks. Hopefully they provide an opportunity to reassess. We put this on the agenda before the horrible news that came out this weekend in the paper about the gang activity that was going on in the Valley and the alleged involvement of someone who had been hired. But clearly there's an issue there, and I know there's an ongoing case, and you can't get into the details of that, but that is the context of which we now have this report. All the general questions, but also the context that we do have a very public and very disturbing news story that has come out. But with all of that, if you could provide a brief summary of the program, where we are today, and the floor is yours. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of Mayor Garcetti. I'm Ann Tremblay, and I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office of Gang Reduction and Youth Development. The vision that drives GRID every day is creating healthy, peaceful, and thriving environments for the areas that we serve. We've developed partnerships throughout the city, and we deliver services that are designed to focus on a comprehensive strategy, and that strategy includes gang prevention, gang intervention, violence interruption, and community engagement. And we work really hard to do that in an effective way, using innovative tools and ideas and constantly improving and innovating, and we do that in a very collaborative way, both with our nonprofit contractors, a total of 25 of them throughout the city, with our local colleges and universities who support us with research and evaluation, as well as within the city family, the council offices, recreation and parks, and certainly with the Los Angeles Police Department. And we have seen results. In 2018, in the GRID zones, in those 23 neighborhoods that GRID focuses on, gang-related violent crime saw a 10% reduction in 2018 versus 2017. So far this year, there has been some upticks in certain areas in gang-related violent crime. That category does include things that GRID doesn't fully focus on, like gang-related robberies, that sort of thing. So there has been, so far this year, as of last week, in gang-related violent crime citywide in the GRID zones, not not everywhere, but in the grid zones, which is what we focus on, about a 4.7% increase in gang-related violent crime. Again, that includes all categories of violent crime. If we narrow down to homicides, there's actually been a 22% reduction in the grid zones compared to last year. And when we look at victims shot, it's a 1.6% reduction. So we've had some upticks in different parts of the city throughout the start of this year. But I will say what we do and what we focus on, whether we're seeing upticks in a certain area or we're seeing the trend lines go down, our grid contractors and our grid team remains completely focused on driving those numbers even farther down. We all here know that we've seen some of the safest numbers in the last 3, 4, 5 years in the city. Historic reductions in violent crime overall, as well as gang violent crime, as well as our homicide numbers. And so while we look at the numbers and those matter to us, that is not our sole focus, because one is one too many. One shooting, one family harmed is one too many. I do want to briefly say, as I may not have ever reported it to this committee, your comment, Mr. Chairman, about the inability to prove a negative. I will say, by our investment in research and evaluation, we were able to find a researcher at UCLA who helped us do just that. So we've had one report that's come out citywide, another one that's forthcoming that focused really on South LA because of some of the dynamics there and the high numbers overall. And as a matter of fact, the report that was released in 2017 showed that grid incident response, that is the grid office, the program coordinators, in conjunction with the intervention workers, as well as LAPD, when that triangle happens in response to a shooting, we prevent retaliations. And that report estimated that in a 2-year period, 185 gang-related violent crimes were prevented by this work. And that, again, that was for South LA. For citywide, the numbers are quite similar. That is, that grid incident response produced 43% fewer retaliatory acts of violence. So it's cutting edge research techniques and that use predictive analytics and the big data that we collect, as well as LAPD data, but we have been able, and we're the only city in the country that's been able to do just that. So that's sort of the big picture, and of course I'm happy to answer more specific questions, but I did just want to share a few highlights of things upcoming. Summer Night Lights ends this Friday, as you may know, so we're wrapping up another successful summer. This has been summer number 12 of that public-private partnership, with the big heavy lift by Rec and Parks as our partner, and certainly by the LAPD. We will be starting Fall Friday nights at 8 sites. The mayor asked us to expand into the school year, and so with funding from private partners, we're able to do that at 8 sites for 8 Fridays, and that will start on September 20th. We're very happy to say that virtually every contract for the new contract cycle for this fiscal year has been executed with our nonprofit partners, with our contractors. That is unprecedented because it often, with the council recess and all the paperwork and everybody getting approved, that can sometimes take longer than it should. We've, over the last 4 years, made a lot of internal improvements to that process because we want to get the agencies up and running in the new fiscal year and the money out to the community as quickly as possible. So that's something we're really proud of because this early has never happened before. Over the next couple months, starting in about October, our research partners will be releasing a series of briefs on various aspects to talk about the efficacy of grid, both using quantitative models like the one I mentioned, as well as qualitative research and surveys with the community and with the clients and families that receive the direct services. And then I also want to let you all know know, about 2 weeks ago, we were finally able to launch an online referral system. So on the GRID website, which is www.lagryd.org, there is now an online portal where community members, police officers, anyone in the city family, school counselors, teachers can make an online referral to a youth or young adult so that they can get access to GRID services. Those referrals happen all the time, every day, but often are via informal relationships, emails, text, phone calls. This is now one more tool. It's mobile friendly, so officers and others can make those referrals in the field. And I know LAPD has pushed that out to all of their commands, and we'll be tracking how many referrals we get from them as well as other sources through that online portal.
Thank you.
Now I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. We'll start with how do our citywide trends with regard to gang violence and gang reduction compare to other cities? And how do we make those comparisons? How do we get best practices and work with other cities that have similar problems?
Well, we have a lot of great relationships and interaction with other cities. I spent an hour on the phone this morning with a group from Chicago, for example, talking about what they're looking to do as they're trying to create a greater investment. I'll say, compared to other cities in California and nationwide, we are trending in the right direction. While some of those other cities, I mean, Chicago, Baltimore, most, I guess, famously or high-profilely in the last couple years have seen significant increases in their gang violence, in their shootings and homicides, while we're trending in the opposite direction. We do, I'd say, several times a month, we meet with other jurisdictions, both nationally and internationally. We had a group here from El Salvador on Monday, including several ministers from the government there, to share ideas. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Chair, we certainly seek out ideas and best practices from other places, but the amount of investment that the mayor, the previous mayor, this council, and your predecessors have invested in this have really made us a leader. So it's often, we work very hard to have it be a two-way street, but it's often a little bit less that because we've become so much more involved. We have greater investment in terms of dollars, in terms of number of partners, and in terms of having the research, evaluation, and data infrastructure that's very complete and innovative to help us measure what we're doing and to help us continually use that feedback from the data to get better.
And speaking of data, do you guys track the gang crimes that are outside of the GRID zone?
We do. So I want to say, I think the numbers I looked at for the report from our database for the first 6 months of the year, 84% of the shootings and homicides that our intervention workers responded to were inside the GRID zones. That means the other 16% were outside the GRID zones, and that may even include on the county side, on the borders, or in the city of San Fernando, say, that are not in city GRID zones or within the city limits. So if it impacts a GRID zone, or if we have an intervention worker who can get into that community and make an impact, then we respond to it. So we have a very loose definition of what impacts the GRID zone. Sometimes a rival might be outside the GRID zone. Certainly something they're doing could impact the GRID zone.
Got it. So it's more those crimes, not just property crime a gang member might be committing. It's issues that would be gang on gang.
I will say our intervention workers really focus on stopping the violence. Their skill set, their focus, their experience is about putting down guns, preventing violence, versus other categories of crime like robberies or narcotics dealing. That is just not the focus or what they're going to be effective at.
And my last question, then I'll turn it to my colleagues. How are the intervention and prevention workers who have former gang affiliations, how are they vetted to ensure that they're no longer engaged with criminal activity?
Well, there's a variety of pieces. I mean, we have a process with regard to background checks, and we have a criteria. Of course, many of our intervention workers, and even on the intervention side, case managers or program directors, have lived experience. Some of them have had significant criminal justice system involvement. So that obviously does not disqualify them. In terms of whether they are still involved, frankly, if they're interested in doing this job, that's a good sign, right? Because people who are involved would not be spending their time and their investment. I mean, they don't get any secret information out of being intervention workers, right? So it's not like it puts them in a place where they're gathering information or intel. Their job is very specific. They have a scope of work. They have supervisors. So they've got to be going out there and interacting with the community, working with youth and young adults who may need to be brought into services. So, but the experts are the agencies, right? So they have long experience, and so they work. If somebody gets referred to them, they start talking to them and get to know them and see where they stand with regard to that. So I would say it's an art, not a science. There's been times where we in the grid office may have had questions about something we heard, and we may ask LAPD to see if they had any information or any concerns, just like sometimes we do with folks that get hired through summer nightlights. Sometimes LAPD express concerns about some of the youth and their background and what impact that might not have at a particular park. So I'd say it's, again, an art, not a science. And it requires a lot of communication and trust building over time, and to then make the best call we can, because sometimes we're really looking for, if a neighborhood or a gang or a group is particularly active and we're missing an intervention worker who has what we call license to operate in that neighborhood, we work hard collaboratively, but primarily with our contracted agencies does this because they have the access to find somebody who can work that neighborhood. And then on the flip side, once folks are hired, right, we work to do training and professionalize them. And on occasion, we have had folks that have then gotten involved in the criminal justice system. Again, I will say it's rare. In my almost 6 years with GRID, it has not happened often that an intervention worker or somebody working in intervention more broadly has had renewed law enforcement contact.
Okay. Colleagues? Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you so much for this great work. I was just thinking about this as you're giving your report. Back in 2007, the very first, what we then, if my memory serves me, we called it Friday Night Lights over at Glassell Park Rec Center. And that was when I was on the staff of my predecessor, and I was there for the opening of that. And at that time, in 2007, there had been several high-profile gang-related incidents, including at least one federal indictment with a few more to follow after that very summer. But to come forward 12 years to see the difference that the GRID programs have made, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, then Mayor Villaraigosa rolled out the summer night lights the following year. And
2008, correct.
Okay, so, and then we were able to get more and more of them. And I can just give testimony that in the 13th district, in the neighborhoods that I now represent, we hear reports like 90% reduction of Part 1 crimes in some of the neighborhoods where the GRID programs have operated, including Glassell Park. So the success is undeniable. And the level of anxiety when we were putting this first program together in 2007, to say that it was a high level of anxiety is an understatement, because we were actually putting together, as you mentioned, the lived experience of people who had been involved in gangs, directly in contact with intervention, working with the police department, with the community, and we had a hunch that this would work. We didn't have any empirical evidence that it would, but we just had a hunch that something had to give, that we needed to bring people together. So all these years later, I think it's a phenomenal success, notwithstanding some of the outliers. We know that the MS-13 gang member has been, identified as a suspect, but that's one out of probably hundreds, if not the low thousands, of individuals who have turned their lives around and have come to the solution side of things. And I would love it if the Los Angeles Times would do some profiles on those folks. Of course they won't, but we know that this program also serves to lift people out of our, at best, a dead-end way of life. So the social sort of uplifting piece is something that we don't hear about that often. But the grid professionals themselves come from the neighborhoods that they're seeking to make whole again and safe again and have a better life for the next generations. So from where I sit, I see a massive success in all this. My only question would be, I love that you're going to extend beyond the summer hours. The Friday night events, there are 8 of them, and how long will they extend?
8 Fridays in a row.
8 Fridays in a row.
Starting with September 20th.
Okay, so through early November, essentially, or end of
Yes.
October at minimum. And you have a list of the 8
I
centers?
do.
And were those 8 locations based on data?
Data, and we also have to work with our partners at Rec and Park. So I'd say a combination of things, and also, I'll be frank with you, spreading the love, right? We've looked at where we were prior falls, and we want to make sure that as many parts of the city get access to Fall Friday nights. So we try not to repeat, since it's only 8 sites for 8 weeks. So it's data, community dynamics, fairness in terms of those sites and where we think we can have an impact over the fall. Because Fall Friday nights is more youth and teen focused. We do it at Rec and Park sites that have their teen programs and try to really, I would say it's a little bit more, there's a lot of fun stuff happening and free food, but it is more workshops and development, so a little more educational and informative and resource-based than some of the pure fun of SNL.
Okay, well, thank you. I would describe At the Park After Dark as a community building, spiritually enriching program in all of our neighborhoods.
Yeah, we were very fortunate. Some folks that were here from Chicago got to go out and see it.
Terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
Can you walk us through what the protocol process is when you see a suspected activity, gang activity in a particular grid zone? And what does that notification look like for council offices when you do see suspected gang activity in a grid zone?
Well, for our focus in terms of immediate action is the shootings and homicides. So in that violent crime event, we get, as well as our intervention workers, get the electronic notification, the formerly called RACER, now the DOC notification from LAPD. Now, intervention workers are in the community. They've most often know about that shooting or homicide before that notification comes out, because I think it's supposed to come out within 30 minutes, but sometimes it takes longer of the incident. So when a shooting or homicide happens, what we call our triangle protocol gets activated. The program coordinator assigned to that area from the grid office, the intervention worker, and then LAPD are all in communication about what immediately is going to happen, responding to the scene, responding to the hospital, to do that immediate intervention, get some basic information so that we can have rumor control, and then if there's a concern for retaliation, immediate retaliatory violence, start strategizing about what we're going to do with that. So that's for the big major incidents that we track, and we have data input about what we've done and how we've followed up, not just in the immediate aftermath, but in the days or weeks after. And that's using the grid program coordinator. It's one of the unique things we have in the city compared to others, is have the mayor's grid office staff who act as that bridge and buffer between intervention and the police department in terms of communication. Because remember, I know you all know this, but I always like to say it again in public, right? That our intervention workers are not about who done it. They don't provide information about who committed a crime. They're not snitches. Their focus is rumor control and preventing the retaliatory violence. Our intervention workers are also responsible for what we call proactive peacekeeping. So when incidents aren't happening, they're doing community events, they're engaging with individuals from certain neighborhoods or gangs or groups so that they can start building relationships. If there's young men or women that need to be referred to services, bring them into services, and also get guys, if there is something heating up, to try to turn the temperature down so that rivalries don't heat up and result in violence. So for example, in 2018, we tracked over 70,000 hours of proactive peacekeeping by our intervention workers. If you're talking about something where things kind of heat up, like recently I was reached out to by one of my former colleagues in the city attorney's office who works in the property abatement team, and she was hearing about challenges and issues of gang activity around, because she was focused on a property that the neighboring schools, both the elementary school and the middle school, were seeing activity and concerns about recruitment of students as young as 10. So when I got that information, I talked to my program coordinator within my office, and she's now proactively working with LAPD, with the prevention and intervention agencies for that area, to develop strategies to make sure everybody's aware. This is what the community is saying, that these youth are being either harassed or recruited. So what are we going to do? And our intervention agencies are really wonderful. So they will think of strategies like doing some really visible safe passage around the schools, talking to anybody they know from that gang or group to say, hey, let's leave the kids alone.
So how does that information get relayed to the council office? And the reason I'm asking this is because when there are rumors about suspicious gang activity or maybe uprising in a particular gang, I hear it from my colleague that might be my neighbor to the south of me. And so my first phone call is to the captain of my local police station to figure out if there is any suspicious gang activity. I don't know the role that the gang intervention folks at your office and what their role is to notify council offices in terms of any suspicions, gang activity. I'm not talking about necessarily rumors, but it turns out that maybe I didn't have all the information, but then I read the LA Times and we had a major incident or major problem with a particular gang in my district. So how are we relaying that information to the council office so that we're not blindsided?
Understood. So I'll be frank with you, that's really been driven by the council offices and how much they want. Every council office is different. Not every council office has grit in it. So what I would say is, I believe my staff in the mayor's office, who are not intervention workers, they're not formally gang involved. The staff in the mayor's office are the program coordinators, but they're responsible geographically. So if your team doesn't know who those are, I know some of your team members do, we can easily set up protocols for what that would be, or if on occasion you need a direct report from me to a member of your staff, it is a case-by-case basis. I think they see each other at meetings, our line staff and your line staff, but if a council office, everyone's different with what they've wanted to have.
That was my main question. So there isn't any protocols on how to notify. There isn't a protocol on notification to council offices. It's basically, it depends on what kind of relationship with you have at council office.
Yeah, but my understanding is, I will tell you, when it comes to the criminal activity, we don't share out LAPD information. That's LAPD, right? So I know that some council offices may get those same DOC notifications that we get, and that's really their purview.
I just wanted to get a sense as to whether you had protocols in place to notify council offices of activities, but you just answered my question. The last question I have, Mr. Chair, is how many individuals have participated in your intervention case management services to date? Do you have that number?
Oh, for the total, the whole time of GRID?
For example, this year.
Oh, so far this year, well, I have the combined number of prevention and intervention together. As of the last date I have a report is June 29th, so the first 6 months of the year for prevention and intervention, it was over 3,000. The total number in 2018 for both prevention and intervention was 6,500.
Thank you.
And that's youth and their families.
I was going to ask you about that too. Okay.
Yes, our models, both prevention and intervention, are family-based models, so the families are included. And that can be however the youth might define their family if they don't have a mother and father in the home.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions or comments? We really appreciate the discussion and the update. This was a discussion-only item, so there's no action that needs to be taken. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
That brings us to what I believe is our last item, item number 2. Mr. Espinoza, if you would read that into the record.
Item number 2 is a motion from Council Members Krikorian and Blumenfield relative to the establishment of a pilot road construction program using plastic from the city's waste stream as a polymeric binder.
Great, and while we don't have a report on this item, Streets LA has already begun to move forward, and Mr. Jose, welcome, and please give us a summary of the work that's begun as a pilot and tell us about this exciting program.
Keith Mose, Assistant General Manager of Streets LA. Council members, through innovation and inclusion, Streets LA is working with a vendor called Technoso to test the possibility of using a polymeric plastic bottles that can be used for binding aggregates together to create a stable surface mixture for roadways and parking lots. The City of Los Angeles currently uses traditional hot mix asphalt to resurface roadways within the street network, and we are constantly searching for stronger mixes that are more durable, sustainable, that resist heavy vehicle loads while increasing recycling. G5 Plastic is a polymer paving binder that presents great potential in street paving construction and soil stabilization. Test results in the lab has shown that this particular plastic material is 5 to 7 times stronger than traditional asphalt materials. The Department of General Services also performed tests for leaching and heavy metals, and the results were negative. In addition to the added benefit of strength, it also can be produced at much lower temperatures than conventional hot mix asphalt. Some other benefits of this material may include reduction in demand for virgin raw aggregates, reduction in construction time, reduction in truck traffic, reduced impact on the environment, carbon emission savings, resistance to rutting, and streets open to traffic within 12 hours. We're currently working on logistics and details to perform a pilot demo project within the next 60 days on a street that's heavily rutted. That'll be close to here, actually. And that's pretty much my presentation. I'm ready for questions if you have any.
Great, thank you so much. And so where will the pilot take place?
Right now we're looking at First or Temple and Grand in front of the Disney Center. There's an area that goes uphill that's heavily rutted due to the buses. And so when I say the material is 5 to 7 times stronger, it's almost as strong as concrete materials. It's that strong.
Well, and is it also going to be tested in some of the hottest parts of the city? Is it prone to melting?
No, it's not prone to melting. This is not the same as a reduced albedo effect, things like that. What it provides added strength as far as to the soils and pavements. So that way we can put it on streets with heavy bus traffic, for instance, that will actually basically stop the areas where you see bus traffic, where you see all that rutting, pushing, and shoving. This will hold up to that and stand up to those heavy vehicles.
Right. And do we have, or does the vendor have a method of removing contaminants from recycled plastics, or does it require uncontaminated plastic?
Typically, it should be uncontaminated plastic. What it goes to a place it's actually local. They take the plastic bottles and convert them into pellets. Those pellets are then melted down into a liquid form, and typically the contaminant should be removed prior to that. I'm not fully vested or understand the total process, but basically our intent is to basically start using a product, start doing something locally with vendors locally as far as in production of this particular material.
Does a vendor, where do they get their plastic?
Right now they just collect it from a manufacturer that actually produces this particular material, but we're going to work with them to produce this product locally.
These recycled bottles?
Correct.
Okay. And I think you said it, but there's been no leaching or anything?
Correct. So currently working with the General Services Department Standards Division to test for heavy metals, leaching, things like that, to make sure that's a safe product to release, I'll say, into the environment. And so all of our testing that, it's shown positive results so far.
Have there been other cities that have been testing this?
Not that I'm aware. I know that people are starting to explore and look at this technology. It's a new and emerging technology.
So once again, we're on the cutting edge as a city.
Yes.
That's great. Colleagues? Mr. Rue?
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this is a very creative way of recycling cities' plastic waste, and I very much look forward to the final study and what your pilot program comes up with. So I don't know if I caught it, but so this is recycled plastic, but where's the plastic coming from? I mean, is it from...
Plastic bottles.
No, I mean the actual source. Is it local? Is it a local source?
Right now, to be a local source, there's a vendor actually that's in, I want to say, the harbor area that actually produces these pellets right now. And so the vendor will be working with that particular vendor, and they're actually trying to look at opening a plant here to collect our plastic bottles.
Okay. So right now, is there only one vendor that makes these pellets that we take, and I guess we take it into the city and then we melt it down and do whatever we need to do?
That I'm aware of right now, yes.
Okay. So if this pilot project is successful going forward, because I know, like, for example, our own city services, we create asphalt, right?
Correct.
So will it be something like that where we'll be integrating the plastic, recycled raw plastic into our plants to create the surfaces, or will it be an outside vendor? Because creating a cottage industry locally is also great as well. But
Well, the good thing about this particular product is something that, when you think of our traditional paving operation, it'll be done directly in the field, not in an asphalt plant. It's a pug mill, so to speak, that basically blends and recycles material in place as we're grinding and milling the street and putting it back as it recycles in place on the spot.
okay. Well, so yeah, in the report, when you do come back, when this pilot project is done, I would really like to see the actual life cycle analysis of the actual. I know it comes from bottles, but when our bottles get recycled and it goes to sanitation and it goes to one of our recyclers and where it goes, and seeing that little map would be great.
You got it.
Ms. Martinez?
Do you have any idea how much plastic material currently goes through our waste facilities on an annual basis?
I'll have to report back on that, and I can
You have to what?
I'll have to report back on that. So, on how much plastic bottles goes through.
Yeah, actually goes through our waste facilities. Any idea? No? Okay. Right. I just want to get a better sense. But so, what about? Do we have any idea what the cost associated with turning plastic into the polymetric binder? How much does that cost?
So we're working on that right now.
Equipment and what it would take to actually train our staff.
Right. So we're working on that right now with the vendor. As part of the pilot, we're actually speccing out the equipment now to see what it takes. It's something that we can purchase or either contract out. It's something that we can do. The actual production of the material, we're working with the vendor right now as far as what the actual cost will be. Because our intent is basically to reduce our cost to pave streets using this particular material and supplement that as far as the traditional asphalt binder with this plastic binder. The good thing is, it's like some of the things that I mentioned, it reduces the demand for raw aggregates, so we're not buying, rock and sand. Basically, it reduces our truck traffic because we're not bringing more trucks onto it. So there's an added benefit. Typically, when we do this type of recycling, we see a 30 to 40% decrease in our costs in doing recycling. Recycling is one of the true ways that we actually see savings in producing hot mix asphalt and other things.
So I think, Mr. Chair, you had asked whether other cities have used this method. I thought in the motion that was introduced, I read that United Kingdom and Australia had used this method. Have we seen the results, how it's worked there? Do we know?
I haven't seen the results yet.
Okay. All right. When is the report going to be ready? Maybe you can include some of these questions I asked.
Yes, I will include everything as far as on life cycle, who else is using it, the added benefits as far as the savings, the actual cost to produce this material will all be included in the report.
Right. And any costs associated with equipment and
Yes.
staff training. Okay.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Keith. I just have a question, and this might follow on Ms. Martinez's line of questioning as well, where it's been done, if it's in the UK or Australia. does the polymetric binder extend the life of the pavement, to your knowledge? And I imagine you suspect that it will. Do you have any sense? Because if we incorporate this widely, of course, then that's a financial savings. Do you have any sense of that?
So when I say that the material is 5 to 7 times stronger, it can hold up to the heavyweight traffic. So therefore, it will extend the life of that particular pavement. That's the great thing about it. When I say it's as hard as concrete, I'm surprised at how durable this material is, how the strength of this material. Just that strength alone is, it will basically, extend the life of the street. It stops that reflective cracking that allows that water penetration, things like that. It's able to stabilize soils. It's a very strong material, and like I say, I'm amazed at how strong this particular material is. So yes, it will extend the life of our streets, and will also cut down on costs as far as on our maintenance costs going forward, because you'll see less rutting, less shoving, less potholes on these particular streets. And then once we put this material down, we'll actually be able to come back. There's several things you can do. You can put a slurry seal application over it, which is one of our thinnest applications, cheapest applications, or a thin lift overlay over it. And then basically once we come back to do our maintenance on it, we just have to remove that 1.5 inch layer of asphalt. And that's when we're really at our most inexpensive, cheapest way of performing resurfacing in the city of Los Angeles.
And to your knowledge, and maybe you just answered that, but in terms of the cool pavement process, how does this polymetric binder interact with the cool pavement technology? Do you know that yet?
Right now, it's two separate technologies. It's something that we can also look at doing. When I say we could put a slurry seal over it, when we do our cool slurry, cool pavements, when we do, say, go into local neighborhoods, this could be a possibility. As we use this polymetric binder, then we could cap it with a cool slurry or cool pavement. There is possibilities. But it's, in of itself, it's not, doesn't do the albedo effect that we're looking for. It doesn't have that pigmentation or color that we're necessarily looking for, but it's something that could possibly use as one of our treatments along with that.
Okay, thank you.
Good thing. Does the plastic pellets that we're getting, does that cost us money, or are we basically helping by hauling away materials?
So that, I haven't worked out those details yet. So we haven't gotten to that point, because we're working with the vendor basically to do the demo, basically produce it locally, and then we'll have to see what that actual cost is.
The bottom line, I think, Adele Hashley, General Manager of LA Streets LA, I think the key thing we're looking at is this is still a pilot. We still haven't figured that out, but we're trying to find a tool in the toolbox that can help us, one, prolong the life of pavement. Two, it's make it environmentally safe, that we're not using heat that exposes to the employees and the workers. The third thing is finding another use for our bottles that we use here. So it's a three-way, and we don't have all the answers. And I know right now what we're doing is doing a pilot. We're going to do the analysis, but if it works and it's something that we're going to add to our operation, we will figure out how we can integrate what we're doing with our waste stream that we have in Los Angeles. The bottom line is we want to recycle our own bottles for our use. So I see this as a win-win if it works. We're still out on the research and review, but I think we want to be on the leading edge. And also, we know how plastic bottles are. Everybody's talking about them as being a waste, but also we're trying to figure out a use for them. And if we do it in LA, I think everybody else is going to be looking at this, and we will have something that we can always show it to others that we can get things done, and we'll find a home, a reuse for our plastic bottles. So I'm excited about it. I know Keith is working hard on getting it. Let's get the pilot in place. In 60 to 90 days, we'll come with a report that tells you exactly the cost. And the contractor we're talking to is willing to even open a facility in LA near a facility, a recycling facility. So let's figure out how we can get this done. But really, your support and the mayor's support on allowing us to look for new technology is great. But Keith has been working really hard on looking for different tools and to put it in our toolbox to really stretch our dollars, but also making us environmentally sustainable in LA.
Great. Well, I'm excited by this. I think we all are. Any additional comments or questions? Then what I'd like to do is approve the motion without objection. That'll be the order. Mr. Espinoza, is there anything else left on our docket?
The desk is clear.
Great. This meeting's adjourned. you're like, hey,